Hi guys, Dennis here, and welcome to the continuation of my CoreData series. I originally planned to have only the first 3 parts, which are now available for viewing on YouTube, but several viewers have requested that I do one more tutorial on editing. So here it is, part 4, editing the data model with CoreData. Now I strongly suggest, unless you're very familiar with setting up a CoreData project and subclassing, that you take the time to go through the first 3 parts of this series. Doing so will bring you up to speed and get you ready for this video. And in this video, I'll be picking up where we left off in part 3. I'll be demonstrating how to make changes to the data model that we created and how to make edits to the patient object. For those of you that have gone through the first 3 parts, you'll be ready to rock and roll. Things will look a little different though, because we're now using Xcode 5 and the first 3 parts were done using version 4. So enough of the introduction, it's time to get started. Okay, let's open up Xcode. And we're going to open up our previous project, which is CoreData. And the first thing that we want to do is go over to our main storyboard and just check the layout to make sure everything is okay, because we've now upgraded to Xcode 5, so we may have some layout issues. So let's go over to main storyboard. And in fact we do. As you can see, we've got some partially obscured labels and text boxes here, and I bet we have the same thing on the prescription, which we do, so let's fix those. So we can probably grab this guy, which we can, and then we'll do a shift and grab the other 2 and bring those down to about there. But notice that we can't grab the label that's behind our title bar. So how do we get that? Well, we can go down to our outline inspector here, and now we'll be able to select that, and we want to select the patient first name label. And now we can open up our inspectors panel and go to our size inspector, and using the y-axis we can now bring that label down to right about there. And let's do the same thing with our add prescription. First we'll grab as much as we can this way. And now we're going to do the same thing with that label, and that label is called prescription name. As you can see, now we have the grab handle surrounding that label, and using the size inspector we'll readjust the y-axis and bring that label down like so. Let's close out our document inspector and utilities and inspectors, and let's make sure that there's nothing wrong with our prescription table view controller or the patient, and that looks good. So let's go ahead and build and run and discuss what our objectives are in this tutorial. Okay, as you can see, we have our Paul Brown, Fred Jones, Sarah Smith, and Steve Smith patients in there, and if we were to drill down, we'd see our prescriptions, and I think Sarah is the only other one that has a prescription, and that's true. So what we're trying to accomplish now is to figure out how we can edit Paul Brown or Fred Jones or whatever. Right now, the only way to do it is if we drill down, that just takes us to our patient. So we need an alternative way to open up another screen so that we can provide an edit. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and close that down. So the first thing we want to do is, to make this a little interesting, we're going to go over to our Add Patient View controller, and we're going to add one more data field. So let's open up our inspectors. And what we want to do is add another field called patient age. So that's going to require a label and a text field. So let's go ahead and do a search in our library for a label, and we'll drag that over right about there. Let's expand it out, and we're going to go to the attributes inspector, and we're going to entitle this patient age followed by a colon. So now we need a text box. Let's go back down to our object library and type text in, and let's add a text box right about there. We'll resize that. Exact size is not critical, we just need to do that. And while we're on the text box here, let's go ahead and change the keyboard. Instead of default, we're going to change that to number pad, since the only thing that we'll be entering into this particular text box will in fact be numbers. Okay, so it's time to add another view controller. Let's close this out and shrink our area down a little bit. And we can open this back up, and let's add another view controller here. And this is going to be used to edit our patient information. Okay, let's expand that back. Now, little shortcut here, what we're going to do is we're going to go back up to the Add Patient, and we're just going to drag all these down. Let me close out this message here. All these objects, and we're going to do a Command C and copy them all. And then we're going to go down to our new view controller, click inside the view controller, and just do a Command V and paste them all in there. That's going to save us a significant amount of time here. And let's position this to where we want it, right along that edge, and we'll bring it up like this. To right about there is where we need it. Okay, the next thing we need to do is create a segue from our patient's view controller to our edit patient view controller. So how do we go about doing that? Well, it's a multiple step process. And the first thing we're going to do is go up to our patient's view controller. We're going to select the cell, and we're going to go to the accessory property and change it from disclosure indicator to detail disclosure. And notice that gives us this little information icon right here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our segue, which is, as you know, a control drag, and we're going to release. Now this is very important. Normally we'd be selecting something underneath the selection segue, but this time we're going to select something under our accessory action, and in this case we're going to choose a modal. Let's go ahead and click on our segue indicator, and let's name the segue while we're here, and we're going to call this edit patient. And we'll go ahead and change the transition style to flip horizontal. I think that's a pretty cool transition style. So while we're here, let's go ahead and click on the view controller once again, and let's embed this in a navigation controller. So we go up to our menu bar, click on editor, and embed in navigation controller. I think we're ready to test this out, see what we've got so far. Okay, let's build and run. And let's make sure that we haven't messed anything up. So let's click on Paul Brown in the row here, and that gives us our patient, or our prescription information rather. Let's go back, and this time let's click on the icon, and we should get our new screen, which we do, and it flips horizontally. So that's exactly right. So let's close that out. Let's do one other thing down here. We'll go over to our title bar, and let's call that edit patient. Let's go ahead and run this again just to see what it looks like here. We'll click on our little icon, and we have edit patient. And you know, let's go ahead and bring all these fields down just a little bit more because it's a little close to our title bar here. Let's go ahead and do that. And to do that, we're just going to grab everything, and we'll use our down arrow and just drag everything down just slightly. Okay, there's a couple of more objects we need to add here, and that's going to be a cancel button and an edit button. So let's go ahead and select our view controller, open back our utilities inspector, and we'll do a search on buttons. And there's our bar button. So let's drag those over. There's one guy, and there's the second guy. This first guy we're going to call, or we're going to change the identifier to cancel. The second one, we're going to leave the identifier as custom, and you'll see why we do that here a little bit later, because this object, this control, is going to perform double duty here. We will change the title, however, to edit. Okay, let's go ahead and build and run once again, see what we have. And we'll click on our icon here, and we've got cancel, we have edit, and it looks like we have all our controls, so we're looking good so far. Okay, next up, recall that we've added a patient age field. So that's going to require that we go into our data model and make a change there. So let's open up our CoreData folder, and we'll go to their data model. And we need to go under patient entity and add another attribute. And we know how to do that from our previous videos. We just click the plus sign, and we're going to call this patient age. And we'll change the type. We'll just make the type string for simplicity's sake. This could be an integer if we wanted to, but for simplicity's sake, we'll keep it as a string. Now, normally, if we were creating this entity, from this point, we'd go up to Editor and select Create NS Managed Object Subclass, and as a result, we get these guys over here, the patient H&M file and the prescription H&M file. But obviously we've already done that, so we certainly don't want to do that again. So we have to do those changes manually. So what I want to do before we do that is run it now, and I want to show you what kind of error you're going to expect if you forget to do this. So let's go ahead and build and run. And as I indicated, let's close out our inspector here. We got an error with all kinds of information in here. And what that's telling us is, hey, we've got to go to the H&M file of the patient entity in this case, or the patient class, and make a change there. So let's go back over and we'll go to our patient header file. And the first thing we need to do is add a property for the patient age. So let's do that. Property, and we're going to make this non-atomic and retain, and this will of course be an NS string, and as you know, we called this patient age. Okay, we're not finished yet though. Now we've got to jump over to the implementation file, and we have to add an @ dynamic. As a matter of fact, we even have a warning here telling us that in fact we need to do that. So @dynamic, and it's patient age. Okay, so now let's run this build and run again and see what we have. And I know what we're going to have. We're going to have another error. Build, run. So we still get this error. Model used to open the store is incompatible with the one used to create the store. So what's all that about? And I brought this up as a possible problem in the previous video, but we want to go through it again. Well, what this is, since we made our changes to the header and implementation file, there's only one thing left, and that has to do with the simulator. We need to reset the simulator. So let's go ahead and we'll stop this build, and we'll shrink this down and go to our simulator. And what we'll do is, there's one of two ways we can do. We can just click and hold and delete that. We can do it that way. Or we can just click Reset Contents and Setting. That's going to delete everything though, so I prefer the click and hold this way, and we'll just delete CoreData. Okay, let's open back up our file here, and now let's build and run and see what we have. And now it runs. Notice we've lost all our data, which is to be expected, but everything is set correctly now to take in consideration that new attribute that we added, the patient age. Let's go ahead and add some information here so we'll have something to look at here. And we'll put Sarah, we need to capitalize Sarah. We'll put Sarah Smith in there. Oops. Good old spelling here. And we'll make Sarah 26 years old. We'll save that. Let's give Sarah a prescription. And we'll give Sarah some lisinopril, and this is going to be once at bedtime. And we'll save, and let's make sure everything's working here. There's Sarah Smith, there's the prescription, and let's go ahead and drill down to her edit. And notice we don't have any information here yet. That's because we haven't done any of the coding behind the scenes, but we're going to get to that next. So our first stop is to open up the main storyboard, and we're going to go to the Add Patient View controller, select that, open up our Assistant Editor, and let's close out our bottom pane here. And we need to add one more property, and that is for the patient age. So we'll do a control drag, and this will be patient age. Now we can close out our editor, and we can jump over to our add patient view controller M file, and we need to go under the save method and add that last attribute. So that will be the add patient patient age equals underscore patient age dot text. Okay, we're ready to start coding the edit patient view controller, but before we can do that, we need to create a class file. So let's do that now. We'll go over to our navigation log, or our project folder rather, and we're going to create a new file, and this will be an Objective-C class, and we're going to call this edit patient view controller. And right now we're going to leave that as a subclass of UI view controller. That's going to be changed here in a moment. For right now, we're going to leave it there. We'll click next and create. And in my case, I have to replace it. And we have our folder. So now let's go back over to the main storyboard, and we'll scroll down to our new view controller, edit patient, open up our utility inspectors, and we'll go to the identity inspector, and now we'll assign that class file, which is the edit patient view controller, to our view controller. Okay, so now we have a place to start our code. Let's go ahead and open up our assistant editor, and we'll change this to the header file, and the first thing we'll do is add all the properties that we're going to need. And let's start with the text boxes here. So we'll do this first one, and this is going to be first name, connect, and then second one will be last name, and we also need one for our age, and this one will simply be called age. Now we also need a property for our edit button, and you'll see why here in a moment. So let's go ahead and make this, and we're going to call this edit save, because as I indicated before, this is going to pull double duty. So we're going to call this edit save button, and we'll do a connect. And now we have to do the two actions that we have. First one will be a cancel action. And we'll change this to action, and I like to change the type to UI bar button. And the last action that we need is going to be our edit, and this will be the edit save, and we're just going to leave it edit save so we can tell this apart from our property. Make this an action, change the type to UI bar button item. Click connect. We're done with the user interface now, so we can go ahead and close out our assistant editor, but we're not quite done with the header yet, so let's go ahead and open that back up. So we're going to need access to our patient class file so that we can edit our patient object. So we're going to start off by importing our patient header. So let's do that now. And that's done. And since we're going to be making changes to our data model, we'll also need access to our manage object model. Our manage object context. So just like we did in the add patient view controller, we're going to subclass this class file to our core view controller that, as you recall, contains all the core data methods that we'll be needing. So to start off, we need to import our core view controller. Oops. Okay, so as you can see, our view controller, which is the edit patient view controller, is currently a subclass of UI view controller. But we want to gain access to all those core data methods that we wrote in the core view controller. As I can jump over there real quick and show you, these are our core data methods that we want to have access to. So let's go back over to our header file, and to do so we're going to subclass this as a subclass of core view controller. So let's do that now. Like so. Okay, then we need to create a new patient object to edit. So we'll go down to our properties and we'll do an add property, and this will be non-atomic and strong, and this will be a patient object, and we're going to call this edit patient. So that does it for the header file, but before we can begin to code the implementation file, there are a few things that we need to take care of in the patient's table view controller. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'll jump over here to the patient's view controller implementation file. And recall that in the patient's table view controller, we changed the accessory property of the table view row from disclosure indicator to detailed disclosure to facilitate the additional drill down point that we needed to access our edit patient view controller. So now we need to modify our prepare for segue method to handle that change and to pass a reference to our patient object that was selected. So the first thing we'll do is modify the prepare for segue method and replace id with UI table view cell. So let's scroll up to the prepare for segue method, and you notice that the sender right now has id in it. So we're going to make a slight modification and change that to UI table view cell, and we also need a pointer in there. So we need to add another if statement here that will move us to our edit patient view controller. So we'll start off by checking the segue name. So let's go down here and add another if statement. And just like in the above, as a matter of fact, we can go ahead and copy the above if we want. And we need to change this string to edit patient. So now we're checking for the edit patient string in the segue identifier. And you remember we named that segue identifier edit patient. So if in fact it does turn out to be edit patient, the first thing we want to do is to define our navigation controller as the destination view controller. And to do that, we do UI navigation controller, and we'll just call this navigation controller, and that equals segue dot destination view controller. We've got an error here missing at the start of the message. Did we forget the bracket? And we did forget a bracket. Let's fix that. Okay, that takes care of that problem. Okay, next we want to define the edit patient view controller as our top view controller, but first we better import the edit patient view controller. So let's jump up here to the import lines and import that now. Edit patient view controller, and make sure you grab the header. Let's go back down to our segue, and now we can code that line, and that would be edit patient view controller, and we'll just call this edit patient view controller. And incidentally, in real-life programming, you'd use abbreviations for many of these things, but during tutorials I like to spell everything out so there's no misunderstanding of what's going on here. So this will be an equals, and then we'll do a parentheses, edit patient view controller with a pointer, and then we want to do the navigation view controller and the property top view controller. Okay, next you would normally use the index path for selected row method to identify which row has been selected. But instead, we're going to reference the sender, which in our case is the UI table view cell. Remember, we changed that up here. This is our sender. So let's scroll back down. And to do that, we do an NS index path. And we'll just call this index path equals self dot table view index path for selected row. Actually, we want to do an index path for cell, which is right where it is. Perfect. And we're going to put sender here. Okay, next we'll define our edit patient object by taking the object at our index path and casting it as a patient object and then assigning it to our edit patient object. So that's written as patient, and we're going to call that edit patient equals, and we use patient again with the pointer, and then we need a bracket, and this will be a self, and we have to use the fetch results controller object at index path. And finally, we need to pass a reference to our new edit patient object to our edit patient view controller, and that's done with edit patient. We want to make sure we use this bottom one here, edit patient view controller dot edit patient equals the object that we just created, edit patient. So that does it for this method. Let's go ahead and dress this up a little bit, make it a little bit easier to read. And I want to point out something that's probably obvious to you. You'll notice that in virtually all prepare for segue methods, you'll notice that these if statements are almost identical. The only difference in this particular if statement is that we're using the index path for cell and then a sender method, but for the most part they follow the same format. So you usually have, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of codes in the if statement. So just keep that in mind. It'll help you in the future. So that just about does it for this file. Now we can finish up by coding the edit patient view controller's implementation file. So let's jump over there now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is synthesize our edit patient object that we created a moment ago. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll do it at synthesize edit patient. Okay, got that done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to manage all our properties through code. So we're going to set the defaults here. But understand that we could also set the defaults using our attributes inspector, but I like to do this in code so I can easily follow what's going on, especially when troubleshooting. So first we're going to set the enable property on all our text boxes to no. We're going to do that in the view did load here. So let's go ahead and get rid of our comment here and give ourselves some room. And we'll start off with the first name dot enabled equals no. This is going to prohibit anyone from doing any kind of edits unless they press the edit button first. So the next one will be the last name dot enabled equals no, and the last one will be the age dot enabled, and that will be no as well. Okay, next we're going to set the text field border styles to none. And you'll see what this does here in a moment here. So we'll start off with the first name once again. First name dot border style equals, and we have to use a UI here, so it's UI text border style, and we're going to choose none here. And then the second one, and notice we're using an underscore to reference these properties because we didn't synthesize it, but that's fine. And this will be last name dot border style equals, once again, UI and a default. The code sense is so great here, especially for those of us that are terrible typers here. And the last one is age. See what I mean? Age dot border style equals UI text field border style none. Okay, and finally we need to populate our text boxes with the patient object that we selected from our patient's view controller. And that's quite easy. We'll start off once again with our first name. So we do first name dot text equals edit patient dot patient first name. And in this part, we're referring to the edit patient object and its attribute patient first name. Let's scroll up here and make a little bit of room. Okay, so we'll use the last name dot text equals edit patient our object and our attribute last name. And we need to do an age dot text equals edit patient dot patient age. Okay, we're done with view did load. So let's build and run and make sure we've coded this correctly. And if we have, we should see some information in our edit view for the first time. So let's go ahead and build and run. Okay, if we click on Sarah, we have Sarah's name, first name and last name. We don't have anything for age because when we added the age we hadn't finished coding our save, so we can't expect anything there. So let's go ahead, and we haven't coded our cancel yet, so we got to stop this. Let's run it again, and we'll add a new patient, and we'll add a John Brown, and we'll make John's age 29. And we'll save it, and now we should see John's age if we go drill down to edit. And we do. And notice that we selected border style none, so we have nothing around our text box. So what we're going to be doing here, what we're going to be coding next, is the edit action. And once we click edit, we're going to give several indications of what's happening here. Number one is we're going to create a border style, and then we'll enable the text boxes here. And I think while we're at it, let's go back and make a change to the storyboard. So this defaults to edit, and what we'll do is we'll change that title once we go into the edit mode to edit patient also, and that'll be an additional indication that we're now in the edit mode. So let's go ahead and stop that, and we can continue on with our changes. Okay, let's jump over to the main storyboard, and we'll go down to our edit patient, and we're going to make a change here. Let's close out our bottom view here, open up our utilities inspector, and let's go to the title, and we're going to default this to say just patient when it first loads. So to recap what we're going to do, when we hit the edit button, we're now going to show the border style as being round rectangular, and we'll enable that text box so now we can add information, and we're going to change this title to edit page, or edit patient rather, so there really be several indications that we're now in the edit mode. So I think we're ready to start doing that. So let's jump back over to the edit patient view controller, and we'll continue on. So first, let's jump down to the bottom of the file and quickly code our cancel button. That'll come in handy when we want to run our application. And remember, we've written the cancel and save code in our core view controller, which we have subclass to. So all we have to do is to call super, our parent, and the cancel and dismiss methods. That's quite easy to do. We'll just do a bracket, super, and then cancel and dismiss. Let's go ahead and build and run just to make sure that that's working properly. Okay, we'll drill down and try the cancel button, and that seems to be working fine. Great. Go ahead and stop that build. Okay, so the last method we need to code is our edit save button. And recall, as I mentioned before, we're going to make this action perform double duty for us. It's going to be executing specific code depending upon what the button title is. We want to use this button to put the view controller into edit mode, and also use it to save our changes once we've finished editing. The code that we execute depends on which title string the button has. We're going to use an if, else if statement to perform this check. So let's work on the first part of our if statement. And here we're going to check to see if the button title says edit, which, as you'll recall, is the default string that we set in our attributes section. So let's go ahead and give ourselves some room here. As a matter of fact, we're going to need a lot of rooms. So let me scroll down here so I can bring it up. And let's go ahead and start with our if statement. And what we want to do is check the title string of our edit button to see if it says edit. So we do that with edit save button dot title is equal to string, and we're checking to see if it says edit. And if it does, we want to execute the following code here. And actually, I forgot a bracket here. We need a couple of brackets. There we go. Okay, so if it does say edit, we need to execute the following code. And before we even write any code, let's go ahead and add a log statement here just so we can verify that the method is in fact recognizing the title string of the button. So let's do a quick ns log, and we'll say edit button has been pressed. We'll go ahead and do another build and run just to check that. Okay, let's do a drill down, and we'll click the edit button, and yep, if we look over here in our output, we do have edit button has been pressed. So it is recognizing the string, so that's good. Let's go ahead and close that output, and we can continue on with our coding. So the first thing we want to do is, now that it's performing the check correctly, we want to set the title. So let's do that, and we need to use that with brackets here. So we do a bracket self set title, and it defaults to that, which is perfect. And we want to set that title to edit patient. Okay, next we need to enable the text fields to allow editing. And recall in the viewDidLoad method that we set that property to no, so we need to now enable all those properties. So let's start off with our first name here, underscore first name dot enabled equals yes this time, and then underscore last name dot enable equals yes, and then age equals yes as well. Okay, and as another edit mode indication, let's change the border style to round rectangle. So we'll start off with first name once again. First name dot border style equals, and recall we have to use a UI text UI text border style. We want to use the round rectangle, and we want to do the same with last name dot border style, and it should default to the same thing, round rectangle. Perfect. And then age dot border style equals UI border style round rectangle. And finally, for this first part, we're going to change the button title to save, since the user will, after his or her edits, will want to save them. So that's easy. We do an underscore edit save button dot title equals save. Oh, needed a semicolon after that. Okay, so now to code the else if. So let's go ahead and we use our bracket there. Else if, and now we do a bracket underscore edit save button dot title, and once again is equal to string, and this time we're going to check to see if the string says save. So we do an @ sign SAVE, and if it does, we're going to execute this set of code. And like before, let's go ahead and put a log statement in there real quick just to make sure that it's recognizing that title. And we'll just say save button has been pressed. And let's go ahead and build and run. And we'll drill down. Let's click the edit button. That should turn to save now, which it did. And title should turn to edit patient, which it has. Now if we hit save, that should automatically change that title to edit. Or NSLog should say the save button has been pressed. We haven't coded the edit yet. So okay, everything is working good. Let's go ahead and stop that build. We'll close out our bottom pane here, and we can go ahead and finish coding it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is reset the text fields enabled back to no. So we'll do first name enabled, and this time we want to equal no, and then last name enabled equals no. See, we're just resetting everything back to the way it was. Age enabled equals no. Now we'll reset the border styles back to none. First name border style equals, and recall we have to use UI text border style, and this time we want none. And from now on, it should default to that, and we'll use last name dot border style equals UI, and it does default to none. And then we need a age dot border style equals UI border style none. Okay, there's still two things left that we need to do. And the first one is we need to do an edit save button title change. So let's go ahead and do that. Edit save button dot title, and we need to reset that back to edit equals @ EDIT. Okay, and now we need to set all the data fields. So we need to take the information that's contained in the text boxes and assign it to our edit patient object. So we do that by doing edit patient, and we'll start off with patient first name equals underscore first name dot text, and we'll do the same for the edit patient dot patient last name equals underscore last name dot text. And then edit patient patient age equals underscore age dot text. Okay, and finally we need to save to the manage object context. Now up until this point we've only updated our data fields. We haven't yet saved anything. So to do that, we have to call the save and dismiss method from our parent class, and that is bracket super, and we need to call the save and dismiss. Okay, now we can get rid of all this empty space. So we're ready for a final test here. So let's go ahead and build and run. And we'll drill down. We'll drill down on our friend Sarah Smith. Oh, Sarah doesn't have any age. That's right. Let's use somebody that has age, like John Brown. And let's click Edit. And it jumps back, so we've got some sort of error going down. Let's look at that again. We click Edit. It jumps back. Okay, let's stop this and go take a look at our edit save method here. So let's see, we got if. So what's happening is it's exercising this whole thing and going back to the super save and dismiss. So we're missing probably a bracket. Okay, we're missing a curly brace here. That's what's happening. What's going on here is every time I hit the edit button, it's going ahead and executing all this code because we don't have a curly brace here. Let's put that in, and then we need another one down here, and that should take care of that problem. Let's go ahead and run that again. That was just a sloppy mistake there. So let's drill down on John Brown once again. Everything looks good. We edit, and now we have our rectangle boxes. The title has changed to Edit Patient. And let's go ahead and we'll make a change here. We'll change John Brown's age to 60. And we'll click Save. And that goes back. So if we drill down to John Brown again, that should say 60. Which it does. So everything seems to be working now. Let's cancel. Let's go add Sarah Smith's age finally. Let's drill down to Sarah Smith. She has her first name and last name, but no age. Let's put an age in there for Sarah. And Sarah is 25. We'll click Save. And now if we drill down, Sarah is 25. Okay, so everything seems to be working good now. Okay, that about wraps it up for CoreData Part 4. Obviously, there's a lot more that could be done in this tutorial to make the interface more attractive. Things like adding colors, changing the font size, playing around with the border styles, etc. Not to mention that we ignored editing our prescriptions. The good news is that implementing that would be accomplished exactly the same way, so I'll leave that to you to explore on your own, along with dressing up the interface. So thanks to all my viewers for the questions and comments they've sent in, and please keep that up. And if you would, take a moment to indicate that you liked this video and write a positive comment. Reading positive comments and seeing thumbs ups helps others sift through all the myriad of tutorials that are on this subject. So thanks again for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.